Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael Westbrook. Thanks for checking out this video. Today I want to tell you guys about something I've been working on the last couple weeks, and that's building my first tube amp. I recently ordered a kit from Trinity Amps that's a 5e3 Tweed Deluxe clone. I want to take you guys through the process of building it. We'll hear a demo of it. And then I also want to talk about some tips and thoughts around my experience with it. If you're thinking about building your own amp or building a kit similar to this, I'll just kind of give you some things to think about that might be helpful as you move into that process. All right, let's get into it. It's kind of in a weird shaped box. When it came, I was like, what? This is an amp kit? Kind of weird. It seems to be packed well. Definitely seem to know it. They know what they're doing. Trinity Amps. Power cable, IEC. Here's one of the transformers, or the choke maybe. I don't even know. I don't really know much about building amps. I've never built one, so this is going to be a big learning experience for me. So I ordered this kit a few weeks ago, and because of COVID and everything, the transformers were actually out of stock. So, but Trinity was great about communicating and letting me know what was going on. And yeah, when they got there, they sent it out. So it's all here. It's like wiring and zip ties and heat shrink. Found some scissors. So one unique thing about a 5e3 is that it uses a 12AY7 in the preamp section. It's kind of it's a slightly lower gain tube than a 12AX7. I've never had an amp that uses that type of preamp tube, so I'm curious to check it out. 5Y3, it's a rectifier tube, and then a pair of 6v6s. All these are from JJ. There's the board right there. Everything will be soldered onto that. Nice and thick. It's nice. And here's the chassis. Really sturdy, really heavy built. I like that. So I don't know if I can show you guys this because of the lighting, but all this stuff is labeled here on the bottom, which is super cool. Really, really nice screen printing and everything. There's shielding right there that they put on already, and yeah, man, it's going to be a fun project. So here's an update on how this 5e3 is going. So far, so good. Pretty much getting close to the end here. Not sure if you guys can see this, but I've got the board in there. It's all wired up. All the tube sockets are all wired up here. And I've added a couple of mods just kind of to help with the keep the amp running smooth and good and for a long time. Added some diodes on the rectifier tube and then a couple of resistors over the power amp tubes. Hopefully this should, on the rectifier side, if anything were to short out in the rectifier, then it just kind of protects the amp. And then on the power amp tubes, it just kind of helps the power amps running at a good level and helps them last longer. I don't really know all the ins and outs of that. I'm just going by what I found on the internet and what people said is good to add. At least right now, it's pretty much the stock Trinity 5e3, which is really, really close to the original 5e3. I think the only difference is just some layout changes to help it keep noise out and just to help it run quieter. So now I just got to wire up the pots and the input jacks, and I think we'll be ready to start testing it and plugging her in. All right, guys, I think it's all wired up. I'm going to do some checks that are laid out in the instructions just to make sure everything's good, double check my work, and then I should be plugging it up here pretty soon and checking some voltages and see if it works. JJ 5y3. Here we go, all tubes in. So when I first fired up the amp, I wasn't getting anything. No hiss, no nothing. And I was really discouraged because I was like, man, it's going to take me forever to track this down. But literally in 5 minutes, I tracked down the problem to one missing wire on the speaker jacks, and I was up and running. I hear some hiss. I think that means it's working. We have sound. That's the normal channel. Let's go to the break channel. Success. So now we're going to take a listen to a quick demo of the amp. All the guitars were recorded using the 5e3. The only guitar that doesn't get all of its overdrive and gain from the amp is the Strat part that comes in earlier in the song. I use a fuzz to hit the front of the amp for that one specific part. Other than that, all the drive and gain comes from this amp. A quick note about how I recorded this as well. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know that I do a lot of home recording using a 2-notes captor. So basically what that means is that I'm running the amp direct using a speaker load, and I'm using speaker IRs in my DAW. I've got other videos on comparing that to miking up a speaker and a little bit more about that setup. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. But for now, let's take a listen. I have to admit, I was a bit nervous when I jumped into this project. I've never built a tube amp before, and not only is it a sizable monetary investment, but it's also a decent time investment. Because of this, the last thing I wanted was for it to not work when I fired it up the first time. To save me from the headache of the amp not working the first time I fired it up, I double checked and triple checked my work as I went. I took things slow and just really paid attention to all the details as best I could. Now, that being said, it didn't fire up the first time, but I was able to find the problem quickly and easily. Trinity offers several types of support, as well as The 5e3 is a super popular circuit for first-time amp builders, so there are tons of resources online. Whether it's walkthrough of the circuit or different mods to try, troubleshooting guides, videos on how to put all the amp together. There are just tons of resources on this style of amp. So because of all these things, I was sure that getting into this project, if I had a major issue, that I could sort it out. Overall, I had a really great time putting this amp together. I learned a ton just about how tube amps work. I don't know everything about them now, but it's kind of acting as a starting point for me getting into learning more about how the circuits work and everything. I definitely see myself building another amp sometime in the future. And at the end of the day, it sounds great. I'm really impressed with how great the amp sounds and the different types of tones that I'm getting out of it already. So, should you build an amp? I will say here, and you'll see and hear this as you start looking into building amps more and more, but guitar amps have voltages in them that can kill you. So when you're working on them, you have to be very careful. You have to be very aware of what you're doing. Now, the voltages don't start being present in the amp until later in the process when you plug it up and you have to check things. But learning about just general safety procedures when working on guitar amps is key when you get into a project like this. So say that you've never done any kind of project like this. What do? I think the first thing you do is find smaller projects that you can do that will allow you to understand soldering and get some more practice in doing that. I myself started out with building pedals from kits. I moved to studio preamps. Now, all of these types of projects are a lot smaller, and so they, in a way, require more accuracy when it comes to soldering and aligning parts and getting everything in the right places. But these kits tend to be a lot cheaper, and you're not dealing with high voltages. So I feel like they serve as a good kind of entry point into learning about the process and moving towards building your first amp. Another thing that you can consider is maybe building a smaller amp. Many companies offer a Tweed Champ kit that's a lot fewer parts, less wiring, and overall is just going to be an easier build. Those amps typically run around 5 watts, so they would make a great at-home practice amp or a great recording amp. Tons of classic records have used Champs, so in the end, you're still going to get an amazing amp that sounds great. So as far as a yes or no answer as to whether or not you should build your own amp, my answer is yes, do it. I had such a great time building this amp, and at the end of it all, I have an amp that sounds nothing like any of my other ones, and just sounds great, sounds amazing. It definitely exceeded my expectations of what a guitar amp could sound like that I built on my own. I can definitely see it becoming a mainstay here in my home studio when I'm tracking guitars. It just really offers some classic tones and a wide variety of tones as well. Alright, that does it for this video. As always, thanks for watching. I'll include some links in the description below to the Trinity Amps website as well as some other great 5e3 resources. There will also be links down there for my HX Stomp presets, Kemper profiles, speaker IRs, as well as some Amazon affiliate links for gear that I use and love. Please check those out. It's a great way to support the channel, and hopefully you can find something that you'll use and love as well. All right, until next time, I'll see you out there.